Hello, thank you for coming to this training. My name is Alan Chwanka. I help the Leprosy Mission and its partners to get money for its work from the British government and other similar donors. Today, I'm going to share with you one of the most powerful tools we use in this process. It's called the theory of change. The first time I heard about the theory of change, I liked the change in it, but not the theory. It could be confusing with these words. Today, I want to share with you what it is, and I want to share with you how you can construct one and why it's important to construct one. At the end of this training, you should be able to do three things. Explain what a theory of change is, explain why it's important for your organization, and feel confident to develop one for any problem you're trying to solve. Welcome and enjoy the training. So, what's a theory of change and why is it important? In this session, we're going to try to explain what it is. To do this, let us begin with a story.
What is a theory of change? Let's look at both words. The change in a theory of change is the change that an organization hopes to make in the world, and the theory is their idea of how this will happen. A theory of change helps an organization better understand what it is trying to achieve. In order to begin to understand what a theory of change is, let's start with a story. One day, looking around your living room, you realize you have a big problem. There is no place to put coats. You think, I'm ready for a change in here, and imagine a solution, a beautiful and functional wardrobe. Now everyone will have a place to put their coats. You look online and find the perfect one. You order it, but when it arrives, you realize there is some assembly required. Furthermore, when you open the box, you find no instructions. No problem, you are a smart person, surely you can figure it out. With visions of your beautiful wardrobe in mind, you make a plan. You set aside some time, gather tools, enlist a helper, and get started. You soon find out that there are a lot of pieces in this box, and it's hard to know which ones go where. You start with the pieces that seem easiest to fit together. But then what do? You don't make a lot of progress. Your wardrobe isn't turning out to be quite what you imagined, and you're wasting a lot of time and energy. Frustrated, you take a step back and consider your work. You think, my plan isn't working. I know what I want to build, and I've gathered the time, tools, and help to get this done, but I don't know how the pieces fit together. What if I could imagine the finished wardrobe in front of me and somehow take it apart piece by piece? By working backwards, I could see how my box of pieces fits together. So you try it. First, you see that there are three main parts: doors, drawers, and a cabinet. If you have these three pieces built, you can make the wardrobe. Now that you've separated the doors and drawers from the cabinet, you see that the cabinet has two parts, the top and the bottom. If those two parts aren't put together correctly, then the doors and drawers won't fit. Now that we have each part separated, we can see the individual pieces that each is made of. If you are missing any of these pieces, then you won't be able to complete the wardrobe. By the time you've finished working backwards, deconstructing the wardrobe, you've created a diagram of all the essential pieces at multiple stages that are needed to build the wardrobe. With this theory in hand, you can start your work of putting it together.
Whether it's building a wardrobe or ending leprosy, a theory of change helps a non-profit organization to understand what it's trying to achieve. The ultimate goal of the Leprosy Mission is to defeat leprosy and transform life. Our mission is to follow Christ and break the chains of leprosy and empower the people affected to attain healing, dignity, and life in its fullness. Unlike building a wardrobe, which has a clear goal, discrete pieces, and one right way, the work of the Leprosy Mission has complex problems, moving pieces, and multiple solutions. Let us pretend the person in the story was the leprosy mission. The leprosy mission sees a big problem. There is no place to put cots in the room. Their mission is to build something to put cots in. Their vision is a living room where everyone can put their cots. The leprosy mission had a clear understanding of what it was trying to achieve, a wardrobe. But it was not enough to start with the end in mind. The leprosy mission needed more intermediate goals. NGOs, like the person in our story, do create plans for the actions they're trying to make for their goals. The largest one being a strategic plan. In our story, the leprosy mission made a plan, setting aside a time, getting tools, finding a helper. These were all good, wise decisions. But the wardrobe was not built. It would have been better to understand how the wardrobe went together first, then with that in mind, made the plans to do it. There is often a gap between the actions of an NGO and its mission. The actions are related to the mission, but how exactly? What connects the actions to each other? Are they the right actions to make towards the mission and the vision? Do we have everything we need to make these actions? Would other actions be better? A theory of change is a powerful tool that will help you to make the connection between those actions and the missions of your organization in the language of outcomes. Therefore, a theory of change is a tool as well as a process which helps to describe the need of the people affected by leprosy, whom you're trying to address. That's the why. The changes you want to make for them, those are your outcomes, and what you plan to do, your activities. To create one, you need to develop these elements. You need to start by identifying the people whom you're working with. These are the people affected by leprosy. Set out their needs, their characteristics, which is why, and clarify your final goal. This is the change you want to see in the people affected by leprosy. Once you've identified that final goal, you need to work backwards through the steps you need to achieve it. These steps, we call them intermediate outcomes. They are short-term changes that will be experienced by people affected by leprosy that will contribute to your final goal. Perhaps this is the most important bit in the process. Too often, organizations jump from their activities to the final goal without thinking through their changes that need to happen in between. After this, you'll then consider how your activities will bring about the intermediate outcome. Then, the conditions that need to be in place inside of your organization for your theory of change to work. They are called enablers. Throughout the process, you should consider the evidence, ideally from published research, which exists to support your theory of change. You could include your own data. You will need to represent your theory of change as a diagram, but it's more than the diagram. It also includes the following elements: a narrative summary, a description of the process that was used to create and who was involved, an outline of the problem you're trying to address, the target groups involved, and their needs and characteristics, the existing evidence backing the problem, and the analysis you've done around that evidence, and probably the evidence you're going to collect to prove that your theory change works. It is always nearly better to engage a range of people in developing your theory of change, most importantly, including people affected by leprosy. A group of about 3 to 10 people works well, and you will need about half to a full day. So, why developing a theory of change is so vital? During my work, I've seen firsthand how developing a theory of change can be beneficial to an organization in the following areas. When you're developing strategy, it helps the team to build a shared understanding. The process of developing a theory of change allows team to explore different views, expectations of what the organization is targeting, and how staff should work together. Using a theory of change to co-develop strategy fosters agreement, can inspire staff, can help them to feel involved, can show them that their work contributes to longer-term goals. It also allows you to identify activities which are not contributing to your goals and take action. It helps reveal hidden assumptions, some of which you may discover are unfounded, out of date, inconsistent with evidence. Secondly, measuring impact. A theory of change provides a framework for the evidence that you should collect, helping you to determine what needs to be measured and what does not. This is crucial for evaluation. The best theories of change are justified by up-to-date knowledge of what works in a particular field, like leprosy. This in itself encourages teams to engage with existing evidence. Attribution. By collecting good quality evidence to test your theory, you can show that you've achieved the targets and the desired changes at each stage. Then you have a stronger case for saying your project has made a difference. Communicating effectively. It helps you to quickly communicate the project's aim. The theory of change diagram is a neat way to summarize your work and to communicate it to stakeholders who usually do not have a lot of time. It helps you to bring the process of change to the forefront. All the change occurs incrementally through intermediate outcomes, steps which lead towards the final goal. A theory of change encourages you to focus on these outcomes and to articulate them properly. Finally, developing sound partnerships. Developing a theory of change in collaboration with other organizations can help you clarify their roles and establish consistency around outcomes. So, how do you construct a theory of change? We are going to investigate in more detail the steps you need to take to create one. You will test new knowledge by doing. After completing the tasks in each step, I'll show you an example of how a TLM partner tackled that step to further clarify things. In this session, we're going to look at how to develop the final goals. These are the long-term changes or your vision of change. Together with your team and people affected by leprosy, you will need to understand the problems and their root causes and drivers and barriers. To do this, let each one of you brainstorm on problems. Write each problem on a separate post-it note. Write as many as you can. Then, discuss as a group on the problems you've written. Check. Is there anything surprising? Is there anything missing? As a group, agree and an overall name for each group of problems. Here is an example from the Leprosy Mission of Mozambique and England and Wales. They are discussing on how to agree the problems they've written individually and grouped them. They listed these problems. Community members have poor knowledge of leprosy. There is inadequate coverage of timely leprosy diagnosis, treatment, and disability prevention services. People affected by leprosy fear the loss of livelihoods leprosy disabilities cause. This causes them to lose hope for their future. People affected by leprosy then stop participating in society. There are high levels of poverty, and there is lack of prioritization of leprosy as a health problem by the government. Welcome to session 2. Now that you've listed the problems, we're going to prioritize them and think about the actors in these problems. To prioritize problems, you need to work in a group. Review the mission of the organization. Then rank the problems in relation to that mission and vision statement. Drop those which are out of scope. For example, the leprosy mission's vision is leprosy defeated, lives transformed. Our mission is to follow Christ, break the chains of leprosy, and empower people to attain healing and dignity. The team in Mozambique reviewed their problem list and ranked only 3 as priority. These were community members having poor knowledge of leprosy, the inadequate coverage of leprosy and disability prevention services, and the intense fear held by people affected by leprosy of losing their livelihoods due to leprosy disabilities. It causes them to lose hope and stop participating in society. Together with your facilitator, try prioritizing and ranking the problems. Remember, you can't solve everything. I'll see you in the next session. Now that you've ranked the problems, in groups of 3, using flip charts, identify all the actors in these problems. Who is affected? Who is causing the problems? Who can solve the problems? For example, for problem 2, TLM Mozambique identified the inadequate coverage of leprosy and disability prevention services. Together with your facilitator, identify the actors in the problems you have prioritized. It's better to focus on real people. See you in the next session. Now that you've identified the actors in the problem, you will need to reflect on all prioritized problems and agree the ultimate success for people affected by leprosy. How would it look like? That will be your final goal. To do this, you need to flip the problems into outcomes. This stage provides the overall direction of travel for your theory of change. It's an important stage. Take a few minutes in your group to look at how our colleagues from Mozambique did for this problem. Together with your facilitator, flip the problems into outcomes as shown in the picture. See you in the next session. I hope you're enjoying the training. In this session, you need to think about how the leprosy mission will contribute to the outcomes or the long-term changes that you've identified in the last session. To do this, take about 15 minutes. Think about what's the leprosy mission's main roles? What are our best offers to contribute to the desired change for the beneficiaries, the final goals? Think about what are leprosy mission's values, the non-negotiables. What are our key strengths in terms of capacity, resources, relationships, ways of working? In relation to the final goals, where can the leprosy mission make a direct contribution to change? How can you support changes indirectly through working with others or building knowledge and skills of a change agents? Which areas are beyond the control of your program. We do this because the leprosy mission program is a very small piece in the big picture. There are many other actors and factors in play. This is an example of the leprosy mission's best offer. Leprosy expertise. The leprosy mission can train government health workers in leprosy. It can demonstrate best practice in diagnosing and treating leprosy. It may not be able to get drug therapy in local government-run clinics. This is a role of the National Leprosy Program. Here is an example. Your facilitator will give you resources, and I'll see you in the next session. At this stage, your theory of change diagram should be looking like this. In this session, you'll need to agree your planned pathway, which illustrates your efforts that will lead to your final goals. For each of the outcomes identified in the previous session, think about all the actors identified. What should they be doing differently to achieve their outcomes? Refer to the original flip charts of the problems and the actors which relate to each outcome. Focus on the short-term changes which will be experienced by people affected by leprosy that will contribute to the long-term changes or final goals. Take 1 hour and a half. Identify the realistic changes that your program will make over the short term. For example, in 4 years. Ask yourself for each outcome, what realistically should all the actors identified be doing differently to bring out the outcome? What things should each of them start doing, do more of, or stop doing? Ask, what will it take to make this happen? Draw these changes in a diagram from the right to the left, from outcomes. Keep asking, what will it take to make this happen for each subsequent step? Finally, identify what activities need to be done in order to make these changes happen. Think about this as the support your actors need in order to make the identified changes. This support may be from TLM or other organizations. Look at the example in the picture. In that example, following the red arrows, it shows that we, TLM Mozambique, we will design leprosy messages and provide volunteers the right incentives so that the community volunteers can visit people affected by leprosy and screen leprosy, so that the people affected by leprosy can receive user-friendly leprosy information, so that they are able to recognize the early signs of leprosy. And by 2024, they have prompt access to leprosy diagnosis and treatment. Over the longer term, all people affected by leprosy will be identified and treated early. It will look like this in your theory of change diagram. Your facilitator will give you resources and support, and I'll see you in the next session. Now that you've drawn your pathway to change, based on your defined outcomes and changes you want to see in the actors, behaviors, and the intervention or the activities you've defined, what do you see are the 3 or 4 key elements or beliefs that you have about how change will happen? What 3 essential elements must be in place for your theory of change to succeed? We call them enablers. They may be internal or external, as shown in the example. Also, identify your learning questions or assumptions you'll need to test throughout the lifetime of your program. An assumption is something that is accepted as true or likely to happen, but there is no proof yet. In your theory of change pathway, use arrows to connect the sequences of change that you assume will take place. These assumptions need to be tested. If they prove false, your theory of change pathway needs to be adapted. Your learning questions also provide an opportunity to research one or more areas where you need to know more or you need more evidence. To accomplish step 6, use about 30 minutes, identify 6 important assumptions or learning questions that you'll need to test throughout the lifetime of the program. List them in a narrative. With regards to learning questions, here's an example from our colleagues in Mozambique. Does delegating the diagnosis from district health supervisors to health post nurses who are nearer to the clients contribute to prompt diagnosis? Or will the newly designed incentives for nurses and volunteers motivate positive or negative practice? Or will the district supervisors be willing to delegate some of their tasks to nurses? Your facilitator will give you resources and support. I look forward to seeing you in the next session. I hope you're enjoying the training. Here are some final thoughts. Mapping a sequence of changes or your pathway allows you to identify what is critical to success. Inputs and activities should be summarized without too much detail to ensure that they do not distract from the aim of highlighting the key causal processes. A theory change is not only a diagram. It's a process of thinking through and describing in full how a project should work. A diagram is a representation and a summary. However, a good diagram should show a coherent causal model, a clear explanation of the causal processes that you think will lead to your outcomes. It should be logical. Each element should plausibly lead to the next, and it should communicate clearly. So here are some tips for dealing with that complexity. Remember, a theory of change is a simplification of reality, and it's impossible to capture everything. So consider removing some of the detail from your diagram and put them in an appendix or narrative. Outcomes are the most important part of the model, so think about taking out outputs or activities. Use reference notes. Think about the sequence of change that a user goes through as they engage in your project. A good theory of change can often be built around the sequence of a project user participating in the activities and the outcomes mapped at each stage. I hope you've enjoyed the process and you'll feel more confident to explain what a theory of change is, why it's important, and how you can create one. I thank you for coming to this training. I'll see you soon.